I remember staring transfixed at images and videos of the Cathedral of Notre Dame engulfed in flames 5 years ago. This medieval stone church whose floors I have walked on and whose windows I've marveled at, whose stunning architecture was designed to draw the eye upward toward heaven, which has stood for centuries, surviving multiple wars and providing sanctuary for so many, had become an inferno. It turned out that the whole central dome had been destroyed. In the following months, architects submitted their plans for reconstruction, and once the structure of the building was secured, the work began. And then we had a pandemic. A cathedral that was built over the course of 182 years isn't repaired overnight. And like everything else in this world, the repairs to this cathedral were halted while we took care of each other. It could have been possible, given all that was going on, for the people of Paris to throw up their hands and say, well, Notre Dame had a good run and now it's done. Guess there's just nothing we can do about this. But that would have been unthinkable. So many people were willing to give from their resources, time, skills, and money to make sure that Notre Dame could be rebuilt, could continue its life as a place of worship and as a gathering space for anyone visiting or living in Paris. Our own foundations get shaken when we realize that we're not permanent. As humans, we're unique, or at least we think we're unique in our ability to contemplate our mortality. When a loved one dies, we not only grieve their loss, but we understand that someday we too will die. The end of a relationship reminds us that life is ever-changing. Natural disasters remind us that nothing we build here on this earth is guaranteed to survive, not even giant cathedrals. Just before the story in today's gospel reading, while Jesus and his disciples are still inside the temple, Jesus points out the poor widow putting her 2 copper coins into the treasury in contrast to the rich people who are giving out of their abundance. But it's like the disciples haven't heard him. As they leave the temple, they ooh and ah over the opulence of the building, which has been built with hard labor and with the money of the poor. The temple held the Ark of the Covenant, which was incredibly important for Jews. This was the place where they could reliably encounter God, where they could gather to worship, a place that provided a sense of unity in their community. The Gospel of Mark was written in about 70 CE, right around the time of the Roman destruction of that temple. But it wasn't just the destruction of the temple. Jerusalem was sacked by the Roman soldiers, and the people were massacred. It was said that Lebanon was completely deforested, so Romans could make enough crosses for all the people they crucified. The road to Jerusalem was lined with crosses, and the streets ran with blood. The destruction of the temple was the culmination of a period of terror and bloodshed. For the Jewish people, it was as if the Romans had said, "We will take away your lives, and we will take away your God too." But even as Jesus speaks words that sound so harsh to our modern ears because he is telling the truth of what the Jewish people are going through in that awful period, Jesus is giving his disciples hope. We want to believe that God lives in predictable places that we create, but Jesus reminds us that God is, in fact, everywhere, that God will find us wherever we are, on top of mountains and in the deepest wilderness. We want to believe that the big, beautiful things we build will live on, but Jesus reminds us that nothing we make will last forever and that resurrection is not possible without death. Jesus is calling his disciples and all of us to hold what we have loosely. The Vietnamese Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh writes, "It is not impermanence that makes us suffer. What makes us suffer is wanting things to be permanent when they are not. Impermanence teaches us to respect and value every moment and all the precious things around us and inside of us." On Good Friday in 2020, a small choir sang amidst the rubble at Notre Dame, each person several feet apart from each other. This live-streamed service, broadcast to so many of us who were staying home as the pandemic raged, reminded the world that even though the building had fallen, even though the building itself had been partially destroyed in a display of its ultimate impermanence, its purpose still existed. In the same way, Jesus points the disciples' attention away from the big stones and toward what God is doing. He reminds them that even though stones may fall, what matters most in any time of strife is our relationships with one another. The author of Hebrews writes, "Let us hold fast to the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who has promised is faithful. And let us consider how to provoke one another to love and good deeds, not neglecting to meet together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching." Following that good advice is getting harder and harder to do. Researcher Jonathan Haidt points out that online communities are asynchronous, disembodied, shallow, broad, and the relationships formed in them are easy to leave because there's not much of an investment. But in-person communities like church have events at a specific time. They are embodied, deep, and narrow. You can't have those kinds of deep relationships with thousands of people, for instance. And the relationships are much harder to leave because there's an investment. Buildings are important. They give us gathering spaces, safe spaces, embodied spaces where we know we can be together. But more important than the stones themselves are our embodied relationships with each other that are created in these spaces. What's really important is our ability to be together, to talk, eat, laugh, cry, and celebrate together, our ability to provoke love and good deeds in one another, as the author of Hebrews writes. Today's gospel reminds us that even what we consider our biggest accomplishments will crumble in the face of history. Today's gospel reminds us that God does not dwell in the temples we construct, but in the community that is connected by relationships over the course of thousands of years. We are reminded that we are simultaneously tiny in comparison with all who have gone before us and all who will come after, and yet our lives are infinitesimally special to the one who created us. What big stones, the disciples marvel. But Jesus is not impressed by those accomplishments. Saint Therese of Lisieux said, "Great acts will not be afforded to me, so I must accept little things with great love." Jesus is, always and forever, calling us into a life marked not by big, impressive accomplishments, but a life lived in great love for one another, in relationships that lift each other up and sustain us through even the most tumultuous times. A few days ago, video was released of the bells of Notre Dame ringing for the first time since 2019, reminding us that even when we witness the destruction of something we care about deeply, great things are possible when people come together to build the next thing out of the ashes. Death is always hard, but we know that resurrection is God's promise. Amen.